Again, thank you everyone for joining the session. We are looking forward to it today and looking forward to your feedback as well as we go throughout the session. Today, I'm joined by Martin Quinnen, who is one of our client success engineers. My name is Kerry Pence. I'm on the product team. And our special guest today is Chris Davis, former Citrix CTA. I'll give him a moment to introduce himself. So Chris, if you want to speak a little bit to who you are and why you're qualified to talk about Citrix.
Hello, everyone. This is Chris Davis. I'm a contractor with Tech Systems. I've been working in public sector for 15 years now. I've worked with Citrix products since 2006 through about every iteration of it, and it's just a technology I rather enjoy.
Nice. Chris is a sadly former Citrix CTA. Unfortunately, we all have to put the former title there. Great program. Sad to see it go, but we're excited about the fact that the experts like Chris are still in the community and they're still willing to work with all of us who want to talk about all things Citrix. So for the session today, we want this to be engaging. So ask questions. There is a question and answer drop down in your GoToWebinar toolbar. If you've got questions at any point during the session, go ahead and ask those questions. Many of you submitted your questions when you registered for the webinar, so thank you for doing that. That helps us to make sure we have the ability to answer those questions when we get on the session. But any questions that you have during the session, please put those into the GoToWebinar toolbar because we'll be able to take those questions live on the session. We're also going to kick off with just a quick poll. It's a easy one question poll, take just a few seconds, gives us a little bit of a pulse on where you're at with respect to the topic of Citrix Health Checks. And then at the end of the webinar, when it closes out, there's just a quick 3-question survey. Again, helps us to make sure that we're hitting the mark with what your expectations are and how we can make future sessions more engaging for you. With respect to what we're going to talk about today, like I said, we'll do a quick poll. And then we're going to dive right into it. We're talking about automating Citrix Health Checks. And most people are familiar with the idea of a Citrix Health Check. It's usually something that you hire a consultant to do, but we've got some cool new technology to show you that helps automate, well, not helps, that actually automates that process and does some really cool stuff. So excited to show you that. We're going to talk briefly about that, and then we're going to jump right into a demo where we go through some use cases and highlight the technology itself. And then at the end, we'll take some time for Q&A. All right, so as promised, we're going to launch a quick poll to begin. Give me just a second to grab it. All right. Question is simply, do you have a Citrix Health Check planned for 2025? Yes, no, or maybe it's something that you're considering. Maybe being on a webinar like this is something that you're using to help understand whether or not this is something that would be applicable in your organization. All right, we'll give it just a few more seconds. Okay. So it looks like everybody on here is either planning on doing a health check or they're considering a health check. So seems like you're in the right place. All right, back into the content here. So like I said, I'm just going to do a quick introduction to what we're talking about and what the automated Citrix Health Check module is. And then we're going to just jump right into the technology and spend most of our time there because that's really what you want to see anyways. Health checks, sounds like all of you on the call, or at least who answered the poll, are familiar with them. Health checks, they're a great proactive way really to ensure that your Citrix performance and optimization is always up to par. Basically, it's good annual hygiene. But there are several reasons why many organizations, maybe most organizations, actually don't do health checks. First being that they're costly. And the reason why they're costly is because they either take people off bench to conduct them manually internally, or in most cases, they have to leverage consulting services to do it, which results in paying for the service to actually conduct the health check. Then there's analyzing the reports, which sometimes that's included, sometimes that's extra. Remediation is almost always an extra fee. So it becomes a very expensive and very time-consuming process. Can take several weeks to months sometimes in many cases to do a health check. So we're helping to answer a lot of those pain points. One of the other things is it's just a snapshot in time. When you have a health check done, it is a point in time, one data point. Anything that changes after the day you ran that health check is now potentially something that's a setting or configuration that's out of compliance, and you're blind to those new issues. And then it also requires Citrix expertise as well. It's the Citrix Health Check is typically only focused on Citrix. It requires Citrix expertise rather than giving you a full end user experience view of your environment. So what we're going to show you today and what we're going to talk about today is how you can get an automated health check. So it's an immediate health check assessment, automatically looking for configurations, settings, anything that might be outside of Citrix best practices. Then you'll receive reports on those settings that are outside of best practice thresholds, which include resolution guidance so that you can get back into compliance. And we're going to show you exactly what that looks like. But you'll deploy these checks in just a few minutes. You can run the health check automatically. You can run it as a point in time, or you can run it as an ongoing check as well. So again, like I said, anytime anything in the environment changes, all of a sudden that health check that you just ran becomes meaningless. It's history at that point. New ones have to be run to make sure that you're in compliance. If you're doing things like Windows patches or Windows updates, that's going to change settings in your environment. You're going to need to have the ability to understand what changes occurred when you went through there. So having that ability to have those ongoing checks, also alerting when there are settings and configurations that are out of whack, that comes part of it. And then the reporting and analytics as well, which goes not just into the health checks, but also end user experience and what the impact of those health checks are. But like I said, we're going to show you what all of this looks like here in just a second. So what does the health check module actually do? The way it works is first you're deploying these pre-configured health checks into your Citrix environment. So again, pre-configured out of the box. You don't have to script anything. It's all ready to go for you. So you can kind of think of this as like preventing future troubleshooting tickets that might have resulted from a setting or a misconfiguration issue. An example might be notification bloat in the Citrix VDAs. It could manifest itself in slow logons for end users. And those are slow logons that didn't have to occur if you had run a check and you had made sure, had the ability to make sure that all your settings and configurations were up to par according to vendor guidance. After the module's deployed, it begins checking again automatically for settings and configurations that fall outside of the best practice thresholds. And this is not, like I said, it's not a one and done check. It's not a point in time. You get that, yes, but it's something that can be done continuously as well. You can either run it monthly, weekly, quarterly, whatever cadence you would want to run it. You can run this health check so that you're always having the ability to identify things that may have changed within your environment. And Chris is going to go into some detail on some of the experiences he's had with respect to that. As it's performing the checks, then it's alerting, depending on whether or not you want alerts set for some of these. It's generating alerts when checks identify things that are falling outside of those best practice thresholds. Another great example of that might be Citrix VDA High Performance Power Plan. This ensures smooth end user experience when you're in a high performance environment. If it's misconfigured, that end user experience is going to be impacted. So this is a great example of something that's typically hard to find. If you have someone that's having a poor end user experience, you're not sure what it is, you're sort of searching for ghosts. This is a super easy problem to fix if you know what it is. But if you don't know what it is, it's really hard to find what the root cause is. And this is something that's a simple setting and configuration that can be handled through something like a Citrix Health Check. But we're not just alerting. When you have failed checks that come in, they're going to come in with resolution guidance. that means there's going to be instructions step by step that tell you exactly what the check is, what the implications are, and how you need to go to remediate it if it's something that you deem you need to remediate. There's also options for automation. So you can choose manual or automated options. When it comes to setting and configurations, most people don't love the whole idea of automation with that, but that option does exist. If you know there are some things that it's checking for that you're okay with it sort of remediating automatically, but you have options for both. But what this ultimately means is you don't actually have to be have to have deep Citrix expertise. You don't have to be a Chris Davis to actually resolve the problems that have been flagged because the instructions are there. You don't have to leverage a third-party consulting service to find and resolve those issues because, again, it does it automatically and the instructions for fixing it are there. Of course, you can always use third parties and you can leverage this with a third party if you wanted to speed the process. But we're trying to remove barriers that we hear from most people as to why they haven't been able to conduct Citrix Health Checks in the past. And then you're going to get, like I said, reports that are displaying the failed checks, again, instruction for how to resolve them. And Martin will be showing you that here in just a second. And again, it's not just a point in time. It's something that can be done on demand or automatically on whatever cadence that you would want to run these health checks. All right. So with that, we're going to jump into a few use cases. I'm going to bring Chris into the conversation. Martin, I'm going to pass the presenter rights to you so you can share your screen. I think we're there. Good. So we're going to kick off. We're going to look at 3 use cases. There are many more, but it's a webinar, so we only have so much time. But we're going to look at 3 use cases, starting with identifying possible attack vectors. What happens when vendor guidance changes or when you bring new hardware or new software in or updated technology into your environment? And then also identifying profile management issues as well. And again, at any point, if you've got questions, make sure that you put those into the question and answer panel so that we can make sure that we get those answered at the end of the session. All right, so first use case, identifying possible attack vectors. Chris, we were talking about this the other day. How many opportunities, it kind of came up when we were talking about bloatware from Microsoft and how there are some settings that automatically get turned on that are potential attack vectors. So Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience with the health check module and how it helps with identifying possible attack vectors?
Sure. So one of the things that it does, and the good thing about it is where, like you said before, when you take a health check, typically with any other vendor, it's a snapshot in time. It's that moment, everything as it is. We live in the real world. Things change daily. I mean, you're adding new stuff, removing stuff all the time, so it's hard to kind of keep track of all that. So a good way to base on that is if you have an ongoing report, which I do. Mine runs every Monday at 4:30 in the morning, reports on my entire environment. I look for things like Xbox service, Xbox Live, Defender definition not up to date, which we don't use Defender in a lot of cases, but there's also an alert that will tell you that if it is running, like it's supposed to be off because you have a different antivirus installed. That's a really good feature of it to let you know, oh, wait, that means that a policy didn't apply or something happened to that machine for that to have occurred. It looks at SMB1 if it's enabled. And in some cases, you have legacy software. Everybody knows we have it. We want to get rid of it, but some can't always do that. But if you don't have that particular resource running that, then you can turn it off. If it got missed by policy or something else, you can set that up in the remediation task for that.
So you mentioned that you've got it running every week. What happens in a typical environment that would make you think, oh, I've got to run a health check every week?
So it's not uncommon to add and remove servers, not so much, but VDI is kind of just recreate those on a pretty regular basis, things with floating pools, and have people coming in and out all the time. So just in case something were to get placed somewhere else, maybe not get moved to the right OU, something like that, we would know about it oh, this is running and it shouldn't be, or policy is not applying to this machine. Because all we got to do is deploy the agent, and we can tag it through a collection in SCCM to say, anything that's this, make sure this gets pushed. And then that agent's going to report back to me, hey, example, like the antivirus is running, well, it shouldn't be, Defender shouldn't be, because it's got a different antivirus solution on it. And that lets me know it's out of compliance, and I can go remediate it.
So what Martin's showing here is a health check report. This is what you would effectively be looking at each week to make sure that your environment is compliant, settings, configurations are aligned with vendor guidance, right? So Martin, you want to walk us through a little bit what they're seeing here so that they can see exactly what the report contains?
Absolutely. So what you're seeing on screen here is one of our health check reports, which is the final output of when we run our automated Citrix Health Check module. We'll dive into the module in a few minutes here, going into the product and showing where we can really view and kind of absorb a lot of that information, make changes, anything like that. But the output here is showing the, first off, over 120 different checks that are contained within that Citrix Health Check module. You can see a tally of, say, how many passed with flying colors. And then over on the right side, we have that tally of how many servers passed. That way we can identify how many machines need some attention in a form of failing a health check, some of those things that Chris just brought up, right? Surprise, SMB 1.0 seems to be enabled for some reason. Defender's running and it's not supposed to, because our antivirus solution should be taking its place. All of the health checks.
I'm going to pause you just for a second, Martin. One of the cool things, Chris, we were on a call with a customer earlier this week, and we were talking about his experience with the health check module as well. And we were talking about this report, and he was talking about just that top half, leveraging that top half, because his leadership loves to see, his IT leadership loves to see when their settings and configurations are optimized. And this gives him a great way to prove to his leadership, like, look, everything is optimized, everything is passed, everything is sort of ticking all the boxes. So that I just wanted to pause before we get into the details of the report, because that section alone right there becomes really important for just communicating with upstream and downstream what the health of the degree of optimization of the environment is.
True, and to that point, Kerry, that the great thing about the top of it is that it only shows what didn't. So when we say that, okay, the health check, if it's not there, that means it passed. So you're not having to sort through everything and find what did and didn't. It's here's what didn't pass, go look at it.
Yeah, so when you get down to the details, you see what didn't pass.
Yeah, and if you had a huge output, okay, there's a problem, you need to go adjust it. Because if you can baseline, that's the other reason to run this as an ongoing basis. And again, daily might be a bit much, but a week, month, quarter, something like that. And if you see a wild variation, then something got missed or something messed up. And that lets you know to go fix it.
So, Martin, Chris was talking about checks that didn't pass. Can you get down into the details a little bit and show a little bit what that looks like in the report?
Yep. So just past that top ribbon, which, Kerry, great point, right? It's going to give you that top level readout. What degree of optimized are we? It's an excellent way of putting it. Coming down to that next section, what you have is a call out of all of the checks that didn't see 100% pass rate. So ones that failed on a majority of machines. Maybe we just have one issue that's isolated to one of our 8 images in the environment, say, for example. All of these where you can see, say, for example, which ones are consistent across a set of machines, which ones are maybe just an outlier or two. Moving into a little bit more of the report in a little more detail. Each one of these is going to be broken down into the full call out of the machines that need attention. So scrolling down in the report for each of those checks that didn't see 100% pass rate, you have a section dedicated to, here's the check that we performed, the 10 servers that need attention, and the full list, each machine that requires some attention for us to go look at. Really easy here to take a look at things like our naming conventions and recognize our machines and say, oh, hey, those all belong to the same image that I just configured or that we just ran an update on, right? One step further, and this is where the Citrix Health Check module becomes a little bit differentiated than just a standard alert system. Up on the top of each one of these banners, you have resolution notes, where, as part of designing this module, we embedded within it the knowledge of what the check is looking for and why it's important. What impact can it have on your environment if it's not in an optimized state, as well as the next steps to go ahead and get that corrected. So this becomes a massive advantage when it comes to looking at each one of these. So you can see maybe it's even a service or a scheduled task that you're not super familiar with because it's buried in the long list of optimization health checks that would be recommended by Citrix. That resolution note is going to tell you what impact it has, and here's exactly how you can go fix it, whether it's on an image or just a few persistent machines.
So Chris, you've got this running. How do you use this report? Is this something that you do? You run it yourself and you go fix it, or do you pass it on to other people? How useful, I guess, are the resolution guides, remediation instructions? Does it? I mean, you're a Citrix expert, but not everybody in IT is a Citrix expert, and even Citrix professionals are not necessarily certified experts like you are.
It's pretty straightforward. I mean, the fact that you've got the way that I use it is so that our team is what takes care of our environment. So our team takes care of it. So for us, it's pretty straightforward. But the good thing about the way that this is outlined here here are your instructions. What if you're not the one that does it? Okay, well, this is a problem. I need to fix it. Well, how do I fix it? Well, you have to give this to the team to do it. Here's the commands to run. Here you go. Or you can set up, like we talked about too, you can set up in the task and have the Goliath agent go fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have both options. That way, if you don't control the environment or parts of the environment somebody else does, you can pass the instructions, which are really straightforward. Open PowerShell, run command. That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, one thing that you said when we were speaking the other day is this is basically a measuring stick for your environment, which I thought was fantastic analogy. That it just gives you a measure of the healthy environment, but also gives you what you need to go fix and how to go fix it. All right, let's jump on to the next use case, next topic. So this is dealing with things around vendor guidance changes, which we know vendor guidance changes all the time, whether it's Citrix or other interoperable technologies, and then updates to the environment. And Chris, one of the things that you and I had talked about was M&A, which is pretty popular across the tech space right now because, you know, we just came out of a really big M&A time. The beginning of the year is always sort of big for that. So can you talk a little bit about that, Chris?
Sure. So it's not uncommon that when you have a merger or acquisition that somebody's getting this new hardware and now has to be managed. So you have to bring that into your environment. Well, in your company, you have a baseline. You know how you want things done, or you have some policy or compliance guidelines you have to meet for that. So, but you don't know that on the systems that are coming in, whether they be servers or desktops in this case, virtual desktops. So you can deploy the agent onto those as part of the acquisition, and you can get a read of where their baseline's at and what you need to do to make it look like yours.
And so how often does that change?
Well, it depends on, for example, if you're doing like a phased acquisition, this could go over years in some companies that are large enough, and even if they're going by department, however they're bringing over the hardware or the resources to manage, you would have to be able to keep up with that. And that's the way you could do it, is that as the new stuff comes in, as each part of the acquisition, push the agent, get a read, bring them up to baseline.
So that's, you know, a lot of times you're talking about hardware there. What about software updates, which happen all the time? Patches happen all the time. How does that impact the environment?
Patching can very much impact it. We had a recent one where Microsoft released a patch for Office 2016 that broke Outlook unless you applied a secondary patch to go back and fix it. I think we discussed about there is a portion where it can report on patching.
Yeah, so when patches, you know, if there's a software patch like a Microsoft patch and they've added bloat into that patch, and it changes settings and configurations back to defaults, Microsoft defaults.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one.
That
Yeah,
that's where we're picking all of that up.
yeah, I forgot about it. It's like you'll disable it and the patch comes out and re-enables a bunch of stuff. Yeah, yep, I remember that now.
Yeah, that becomes kind of a big deal. In most cases, a lot of the services might not amount to a lot of disruption from end user experience perspective, but sometimes they can, and that goes back to the attack vector issue that we were talking about before, because some of those are default. You talked about Xbox service being one of those. Like it opens up an environment to potential attack surfaces, and that's something
It
that
opens it up for that. You're absolutely right. And if and we have seen it before that you get a bunch of patches and then a bunch of services get turned back on. Well, now you're not running as lean. So if you're running everything lean to begin with, you may be skating an edge of one service may not be a big deal, but if it's turning 5 or 10 back on, depending on what
yeah.
those do, that could be a much bigger impact. And again, open up security vulnerabilities by enabling things that shouldn't be.
And how often we'll say Microsoft now, like how often does Microsoft issue updates and patches, events that would cause potential changes to some of those settings that you would never ever think to check on a normal basis as being a cause of some sort of end user experience issue? How often does that happen?
I've seen it. It could be, again, depending on how the patching is that year. And we've seen some where lots of CVEs get released, so a bunch of patching goes out. And typically when you have a bunch of patches that are out to meet CVEs, that's where you run into issues like that. But a couple a year maybe, that you might get a few. Usually it's on the high CVE years that you see a lot of patches, like special out-of-band patches happening. That's when you typically see more of this when you do through your regular patching, because they have a different cadence they have to run on.
So between software updates, vendor guidance changes, if you're bringing new hardware in either through M&A or just because you brought new hardware in, like those are all events that can mess with the optimization of your environment. And so having a health check sort of as a one and done becomes not pointless. It's good to sort of reset each year, but it doesn't mean it's going to last throughout the year. And you may be starting from scratch that following year. So the ability to sort of have it ongoing becomes much more important, I would think.
And the other part of that too, and I hadn't thought about this, but it is also applicable, is that if you have this running on whatever schedule you happen to do it, and through, like we said, merger and acquisition, let's say a bunch of stuff got brought in that you weren't notified that this was coming, but they got put into the OU, they got their collection, they got their stuff, they got the Goliath agent, and now you see 200 or 300 systems. Like, where did those systems come from? Wait a minute. And then you can, oh, I need to go deal with these and fix that. That way it doesn't slip in undetected to you.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's a good point.
And ideally that wouldn't happen, but things do slip sometimes. So occasionally something gets through, but it's better that you have something that's always looking.
Yeah, how many, that'll be a poll question for another webinar. How many IT admins or IT professionals on the call think that their IT department runs in an ideal state? Nothing runs in an ideal state. It just doesn't happen. All right, third use case. This is talking about, we're going to look at identifying profile management issues. And these are things that really potentially impact logon. So Martin, if you want to jump into the health check, and let's look at different areas in there where we can see the different checks. And also, why don't you talk about how you can actually go in and see the resolution guidance and determine whether you want automated or manual remediation. We haven't shown that yet.
Absolutely. So what I've done now is just jump into the product, the Goliath Performance Monitor here, where we can see the Citrix Health Check module running. So it runs within the rest of the embedded intelligence that exists within the product, right next to all the rest of the checks that are looking for live events and conditions that can impact your users. However, of course, again, the Citrix Health Check module more designed to look at your configurations and optimizations in line with Citrix best practices. Each and every one of these, there's over 120 of them, are looking for various conditions. You'll see everything from basic settings to different services, even scheduled tasks within here. The really great thing about this report, as we've mentioned, is you don't have to rely on a consultant, the time-consuming schedule, or really any manpower on a scheduled basis to try to run a health check and get a snapshot of your optimization posture, which is where, coming in here, you're able to see within each of these checks, also can be obviously edited on a multi-basis, so it's pretty easy to adjust. You can switch up the frequency at which we're running these checks, meaning, just as we mentioned, if we want to switch between a monthly, quarterly, or even say a weekly check, it's as simple as coming in here, selecting your module, and adjusting exactly what frequency or even time of day you'd like to run. Now, of course, there's full customization in here as well. So the module comes out of the box, fully configured with things like, as we showed earlier, the resolution notes that contain the information about the check, why it's important, as well as the resolution steps, but also fully customizable. So if there's something unique to your environment, that if there's, say, for example, a different AV solution, right, you can go ahead and add in those notes here. Should not be running on X image, right? Can go ahead and add that to your organization's health checks, such that when those notes come out, you can have specific notes to your environment in here. And then the last, and in my opinion, my favorite feature about this is the auto remediation, where if you so choose, it's as simple as taking something like the provided command right within the resolution notes and adding that to our built-in remediation section in the product. One example of exactly how we'll implement this many times is we'll do one health check, say for example, to audit the environment, output to a report, etc. And then once you decide which ones you would like to auto remediate, you can simply create a duplicate with the steps built in to remediate, as simple as coming over, launching our PowerShell executable, and passing in those exact command from the resolution notes right in here, so that on a on-demand basis, basically, after scheduling exactly when you'd like Goliath to go ahead and make a change, you can have this done, and then that next audit report, which would go out in, say, Chris's case, weekly, right? The very next week, you get a report out and would probably not see SMB 1.0 listed in the affected rules anymore.
So Chris, when you're looking at this and you're, our topic for this part of the discussion is profile management. So when you're looking at this and you're looking for basically unneeded services, like how would this help the health check help with identifying those things?
So it would be things like the power plan, and you wouldn't think that would affect it in the virtual as much as it does, but it quite a bit does. Any service that's not needed, like why do you need a hotspot on a VDI? You don't. The join router service, the Xbox Live, Xbox service, UPnP. You may not need any of those. So the leaner you can get it, the better your performance, which means the faster it's going to load. There's a disk timeout check that it does on it. And to another point too, it also can alert where you don't have reboot schedules on a delivery group. You have only one controller, so maybe your VM just died and you didn't know it. Things like that is another reason to ongoingly run these, so you get alerts on something like that happening. You should get it from other ways, but it's good to have more than one sometimes.
Okay. All right. We're going to take some questions. We've had several questions that came in during your registrations, but we also have, it looks like several more that have come in during this session. So let's take a moment and get to some of these questions.
Hey, right. I got one real quick too. Memory crash dumps. Letting you know if that's enabled, because if you're doing troubleshooting, you may turn on your crash dumps. Cool. But if you have a problem if it's on that machine and it keeps going on doing that and creating crashes, you could run your disk out of space, because we've actually seen that happen. So letting you know, hey, that's still on, you need to turn that off. That's important too.
Okay.
It's a great one, Chris. We've definitely
Yeah.
seen that with engagements as well. Just a disk randomly filling up, right? It's hard to find, easy to fix for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's get to some of the Q&A. Oh, this first one's a little bit loaded. Okay. So it sounds like, I'll go ahead and take this one, Martin. Sounds like they're getting potentially going to move off Citrix and go to AVD. Does this work for AVD? So short answer is the health check module itself, we don't have that for AVD. We do, however, have monitoring and troubleshooting for AVD. So if you're migrating, if you're on AVD, or if you're considering it, it's all additional functionality within the Goliath platform. So if that's something that you all are considering, yep, Martin is showing you how you can link right to it right there. If something you're considering, you do have the ability to monitor and troubleshoot AVD environments as well. As far as the health check goes, I'm not sure you would even need a health check for an AVD environment. They're typically speaking, you don't have optimization problems, which is why a lot of people move to AVD. It's a simpler environment to manage. All right. Someone did submit a question, Martin, during the registration process about synthetic monitoring. So can you just give a quick, you don't need to do a full demo, but just a quick glance at our synthetic monitoring?
Absolutely. Yep, that's a feature built right within the Goliath Performance Monitor. So right next to the Citrix Health Check module, for example, we've got our application availability monitor, which is a synthetic early warning system for users' access to Citrix. So jumping over here, just as a brief look into this feature, we're able to launch on a scheduled basis from various locations, different apps, really anything that's accessible to your end users by Citrix on a scheduled basis, let you know how those logons are performing, as well as give you the full ability to troubleshoot, say, for example, a failure from the end user's perspective with screenshots. So it pretty much takes out the questions of a user submitting a ticket saying, hey, I can't get into Citrix. You don't have to ask them, what did you do? What did you see? Which ones did you click? Or what error did it give you? All of those answers are already provided by the synthetic user as part of running this. And again, on any schedule that fits your needs.
All right, thanks for showing that, Martin. And to the individual that asked that question, we're happy to give you an in-depth demo and understand your specific use case. So we'll definitely follow up with you with respect to that. All right. This is a question on best practices. So Chris, I'm going to let you answer this one. So the question is how often should these checks run? I know you said that you've got it running every week, but just sort of as a general best practice, what would you say for most Citrix teams to be thinking about these health checks? How often should they be running them?
So I'm a little more hyper vigilant on mine. So realistically, it depends on how much your environment changes. If it doesn't really change very much in the course of time, twice a year, every 6 months.
Okay.
If you have a moderate change, maybe every quarter. If you have a lot of change, maybe monthly.
Okay.
But it doesn't take a lot of resource to run it. It doesn't take a lot of time to run it. And again, also, how many objects do you want to have to sort through too? So are you running it against 10,000 objects, 5,000 objects, 1,000? That's going to be part of it too.
That's a fair answer. It's a safe answer, Chris, but it's a fair answer.
Yeah, I hate to say it depends, but it depends.
Martin, next question. I'll pass on to you. How long does this take to deploy?
Little as, I'd say, 10, 15 minutes. As long as you've got the Goliath Performance Monitor running, it's a simple import and enable, tell us what you want us to check against, and that's about it.
Okay, super quick, super easy. It's just enabling.
It was like 15 minutes, man. That's how long it took 15, 20 minutes for us to get it set up.
Okay, there you have it. And just to add a little bit more context to the answer, it wasn't part of the question, but 15, 20 minutes. That's if you're already using Goliath today. You've got Goliath enabled, so it's a matter of enabling new functionality. If you don't have Goliath at all, then you're looking at about a 2-hour process to get everything stood up. All right. Question here. We've got a few questions that are actually pretty specific. So this person is saying that they've got some issues with users that are having audio issues, or they suspect that audio is the problem. I'm trying to parse through the words. It was typed together a little bit interesting. So Martin, audio issues, or Chris, actually, for that matter, you could speak to it as well. Can you give a quick view on how you determine that?
But it would depend on what do you mean by audio issue? Cutting out audio, no audio, intermittent. We have to define the problem a little better first. But so
Martin, where would you go in and see it?
Great question. There's a couple places you can see that data. I think Chris's question is extremely important here as we start to look in exactly what we're trying to troubleshoot.
Matters.
But jumping into the product, say, for example, we have a user who's leveraging audio and complaining about it. We need to see when that audio is happening, right? Or what's going on. You do have full visibility into user experience every time a user logs into Citrix, right within the Goliath Performance Monitor. So say, for example, a user's been in session. We can click into this, whether it's live or historical, and be able to break down. I'll just fast forward through all the data in here. If anybody's not super familiar, I'd encourage you to take a look at some of our demos and stuff as we go into full detail on the data presented here. But right within the products, seeing, for example, the virtual channels that exist within Citrix, you're going to be able to see audio activity within the session. So is Citrix even seeing the data, right? If audio is not working and we have an external device, we need to know where that data is flowing into and out of, right? So coming out from the device into Citrix, is it making it? Is it then being transferred into the server through the Citrix protocol? All of that going to be extremely important and dependent on the configurations that we have within our audio system. If we're using a dictation system, for example, we may not even have it configured to leverage that virtual channel, in which case, taking a look at what we're expecting and then how Citrix is behaving as a result is going to be really important to understanding, if it's behaving as we expect.
And right there in the front, top left panel, are they having high latency latency because if you're getting clipping audio, things like that, you're going to see that latency above 250 milliseconds. Users are going to start noticing it. Now, the higher it gets, and I've seen them in the seconds, plural, and everything's going to act weird at that. And then you can take from that, look at the right one, say how much bandwidth they got. So you kind of got the two right there side by side.
Yeah, all critical data points to understanding how Citrix is behaving, what it's experiencing, and how that influences the user's view.
Awesome. And again,
and if it's Windows 11, check the privacy settings on the machine, because it may be the privacy is enabled on it. It won't let you use it, because we ran into that. That's how I know that. And also, Edge has audio sandboxing. Who would have thought that? But yeah, there's a setting for that, and it won't redirect the audio properly. If that's a name.
So yeah, if you want to dig deeper to the individual who asked this question, if you want to dig deeper into it, let us know. We're happy to, again, give you a demo and understand your specific use case and the details around it. All right, Chris, this is one that's right up your alley. This person's, they're asking if the health check helps with logon issues. We talked about logon from a profile perspective, sort of profile bloat. When it comes to specific logon issues, though, there are details in Goliath that can help them break that down. So, Martin, you want to kind of take us to where you'd see logon issues, and Chris, if you'd kind of maybe speak to how you use this.
Yeah. So if we're having logon issues, first thing where Martin is going is exactly where I'm going, and I'm gonna look there, and then yep, I'm going right to the logon tab. Right there in the login stage details. That's the first place I'm checking. What is my policy time? When I look at GPO, and I've seen it in the hundreds of seconds because errant policy got applied to something, and that went into the hundreds of seconds. And that's an instant find right there. And you can see where each step of the logon process, like server validation, the authentication, GPO, and the profile load. Okay, if the profile is showing several seconds, how big's the profile? Profiles, the bigger the profile, the longer time it takes to load. There's no way around that. That's physics. And errant policies, again, is the other one to check. And authentication would be a piece. Okay, what if something's happening there where it's taking a long time to get the authentication back? It helps you narrow down where to look for the issue.
Awesome. Tons of detail here.
I'll
Go ahead,
chime in
Martin.
here real quick. Gary, one of the things we've also seen in some of our engagements is the ever elusive interactive session to troubleshoot within sessions. I've seen this also in the hundreds of seconds driving up a long logon, and a lot of times can be traced down to something within that, say, startup on the VDA side, but in some cases, it's a stuck service. We've got a conflict because the service is trying to start, maybe trying to be disabled by policy, whatever it is, and Windows decides to wait 5 minutes for the service to time out before it'll launch Explorer. That's a black screen for the user for 5 minutes. Interactive session is just showing it. But one thing that our health check module is going to be checking is a lot of those services, something that could potentially get stuck that's accidentally enabled because maybe you did a recent patch, just like we discussed.
Great point, Martin. Great point. Next question is around sizing. Are there any limitations to the size of the environment that the health check can monitor? And no, there are no limitations for the size of the environment for the health check or for Goliath, the Goliath platform in and of itself. All right, another question. This was probably typed in before we got to it. Are consulting services needed to fix issues? No, generally speaking, the answer is no. Like Martin's been showing, you've got resolution guidance that is included with the health checks and within the report. Of course, you can always leverage consulting services if your team simply doesn't have the bandwidth. So you can run the check, get the report, and then hand it to a consultant, and they can take care of the remediation actions if that's how you choose to. But the whole thing is designed so that you don't have to leverage services. And we do offer services, so if that's something that that you are interested in, we can certainly oblige. All right.
And you can always give it to your junior admins to keep them busy,
That's right. Well, you know what? There's a good question, Chris, and I'm going to ask it out of a little bit of ignorance because I am not a junior admin. But given your experience with the health check report and seeing the guidance on fixing the issues, is it something that, generally speaking, a junior admin could go in and do, given the instructions that it provides?
If they have the permissions, yeah. I mean, it says open PowerShell. Okay, run command. Now, they may not know what happens if the command fails, but they can at least go do it.
Okay, good to know. That's a great point. That's a great point. All right, last question that we have here. Are there storage or compute considerations when adding the module? So Martin, I'm gonna pass that one to you.
Yeah, awesome question. Obviously, running any program requires some amount of processing. It's physics. However, the health check module is embedded right within the intelligent agent that Goliath runs, which is extremely lightweight, low resource intensive. So what we'll normally do, just as an abundance of caution, is run these health checks in, say, an off hour. Usually helps as well when we're not actively making changes to try and go ahead and assess the environment in its current state. So that's obviously one thing a lot of our customers will do. Other things are obviously if you're concerned about, each check is basically a singular query or command against, call it something like PowerShell, right? So if you don't want to run 120 at the same time on your machine, feel free to stagger them. It's another thing our customers will absolutely do with it. All in all, I think even running it all at the same time during active hours, we saw maybe a 20-second spike in CPU, not at 100%, wasn't maxing out, but obviously different tolerances for caution within that load.
And for perspective, I have just under 1,000, around 1,000 endpoints-ish that are being monitored, and it takes the health check report about 7 seconds to run. and it spikes about 5%. So I mean, that's not long. It's not a high impact of resources. Now, if you had 30,000, okay, that's going to be a bigger impact. I mean, obviously, the bigger, the more it's going to take. But
Okay. And we do have actually funny 3 questions came in, all tied, all around the same thing. So these must be Goliath customers. How do you obtain this module? I'm going to just put all 3 questions out there so that everyone knows that their question's getting answered, and then I'll just answer them all at once. Does it need a separate license, or is it part of the Goliath product? Is it a separate module if you're already using Goliath? All right, so the short answer is it's additional functionality within Goliath. So if you've already got Goliath, you simply just need to reach out to the team, or we can follow up with you after this webinar, and we can talk about enabling that additional functionality. One of the questions was about additional licensing cost. The health check module does have an additional cost to it, but you'll find that it's a very reasonable cost with respect to what a health check would actually run if you were going to leverage a consulting service to do that. But again, those are all questions that are better answered on one-on-one calls, because every environment is going to look a little bit different as well. So, but yes, very easy to obtain it. If you've already got Goliath, it's simply a matter of adding additional functionality from a licensing perspective, and that's pretty much it. If you don't already have Goliath, let us know, and we can talk about what the requirements are to get it up and running. All right, I believe that took care of all of the questions that have come in and that were asked during the registration process. So, Chris, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate your time. We do have an upcoming webinar on July 10th, so you'll get some information about that here in the next coming weeks. So just so that you know what to look forward to. If you're interested in a demo or a trial, or if you are looking for services to help with running a health check, you can reach out to techinfo@goliathtechnologies.com. Claudia has added some links into the chat as well for demos and trials. So go ahead and click on those links, fill in. We'll just get on a call and we'll just have a discussion and understand what your needs are. Not a high pressure situation, just need to understand what you're looking for. And if you are interested in the health check, just so you know, it includes the deployment. In addition, you'll get the post-check analysis, remediation instructions, and also you'll have the ability to understand impact on end user experience as well, which we didn't really have a chance to get into on this session. So if that's something that you're interested in learning a little bit more about, we're happy to jump on a call and show you what that looks like as well. So again, thank you all very much. Chris, again, thank you for taking the time to share your experience and your expertise with everyone. And Martin, thank you for running the demo in the back end there and walking people through the product. All right, take care, everyone. Appreciate you joining the session, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for your time, everyone.